Alright, so today I'm doing something a little bit different than following the specific homework classes, the virtual Zoom classes from the Knights Hall. Mostly I haven't been able to make them as regularly now that we started training on site a little bit more, and I want to make sure I continue my power work, continue my training, and as I've said in other videos, teaching helps me focus more. So I'm going to work on a specific, real simple drill based on something I noticed in last weekend. We had our first tournament last weekend. It was a barrier tournament. We fought over a barrier across from each other, so limited movement. And I noticed that for me, it's the first time, even with all the power work I've been doing, all the drilling, first time in forever, I fought with actual gauntlets on. And the difference in feeling really threw me off for a little bit. Where I had less, rotation, a little bit less movement, and wanted to practice that more. On top of that, as we get back into eventually doing melees and other fights, I've pretty much been fighting two-handed axe exclusively. I'm looking to do some experimenting with other weapons, sword and shield, axe and shield, so I want to practice that as well. So I'm going to particularly practice a melee attack, essentially, for this. Something I might be doing in a melee fight before I go for a grapple or as I move away. So I've got my shield here with my family coat of arms on it, my little punch shield, got my gauntlet on. And we're going to start with my heavy falchion. So this is not a falchion I tend to use often, actually, and I don't use it any kind of duel because it's very heavy for me. It's a more of a bludgeoning weapon. If I can get a lighter falchion or an arming sword, I prefer that. But for this, it's going to be perfect. So what I'm working on basically is just a 3-strike combo. So you're coming in A guard or B guard with your shield up, and as you come in, you're throwing the first shot to the head or down at an angle to the head, throwing a punch, and that next shot's coming down to the hip, coming down to the ribs, somewhere in there. So it's just a 3-strike combo, but so that it can be effective, brutal in the fight. If you get that shot, punch, shot, at that point you can either run away and move on, you can go for a grapple, you can, if you've got them in a good position, that shield against their face, you can keep throwing that shot at the hip, elbow joints, whatever you see available and open. So this is going to be kind of practicing that, and a really basic drill. I'm going to do it with a heavy falchion first, then I'm going to switch over to a hand axe and see kind of I feel the difference. And both times focusing on using that gauntlet and getting a little more of that motion. So when I say the gauntlet, what I mean is you can see here, the sword kind of sits in that little spot in the gauntlet. It has less movement than if I had freehand. So I had in my free hand here, there's a lot more flexibility with where I want to put it. I can kind of maneuver it around a little bit more. So I found myself in my the duels we were doing, that sometimes I wouldn't have it positioned right. I wasn't as comfortable with it in this hand, and finding I was throwing, especially on my offside, I was throwing some flat shots instead of coming all the way across the top. And I just want to be able to work on that and practice it. All right, so I got my Pell here. So coming in an A guard, I'm going to throw that first shot here, punch the head, down the hip. That's all it is. And B guard, punch, shot, boom. I go to the gap there. And one thing that I'm constantly working on is keeping my head up. I tend to do this. Throw a shot, put my head down, and if someone grabs my head, I am done. So I need to get that head up. So take that in guard. I'm going to throw that first shot, punch, heads up, down to the hip. I don't have to look. I know it's there. Shot, shot, shot. That's basically it. Just throwing those practice shots. I'm going to do that a whole bunch. And flip it over to the hand axe. So a similar idea, just a different little weapon. I'm going to start fighting with this in some melees, giving some attempts, see how it goes. So come in, it's going to be shot, shot, shot. Shot. That's the homework. I'm gonna do 300 strikes. I'm gonna do 150 with both weapons. Just practicing, getting that feeling down, making sure everything feels right. Real simple, but again, as usual, I'm trying to drill this stuff into my brain so I don't have to think about it in a fight. I find that sometimes when I get in a fight, I'll just keep throwing the shot here. Really, that rotation of the body is what gives me a lot of power and throw your opponent off, right? Coming up from different angles. Again, I'm Chuck Goodwin. I fight at the National Knights Hall. I fight for the Nightmares and the regional team, the Executioners. So if you have questions, you can hit me up on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook under Woodchuck Knight. Leave questions, comments below. Subscribe and like if you want to see more of this stuff and more about armored combat.